All right, here we are live. Hi, just your first time to the channel, first time watching one of our live videos. Appreciate you joining us. My name is Bruce Clark, and we make videos for all things Southern California. What's like to live here, work here, play here, own a home here. So if you haven't, do us favors, hit the subscribe button, click the bell for notification. We'd love to have you aboard so that you get notified when we make videos. We've made lots of videos. There's a ton of them get ready to come up. So hit that subscribe button, click the bell for notification. My name is Bruce Clark. I'm a licensed real estate agent, been doing it more than 17 years. And it's pre-gray. So absolutely love it. And we service all of Southern California, predominantly Orange County. However, we've also sold in San Diego County, Los Angeles County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County. So we know Southern California. I lived in Ventura County for, I don't know, 7, 8 years. I've lived in, I used to work in Los Angeles County. We've lived in Orange County 25, 30 plus years. It's been a while. So we know Southern California. We have kids, so we get around a lot. So I don't want to say we get around, we get our family. So, but tonight we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was I want to talk about inventory again. It's a continuing theme, but I want to come back to it. And so what I did today was I want to do a little comparison. And I went back to April, and I also compared with September of 2023. And you can see the number of sales has increased from April to September. But what's the number of homes pending has gone up, almost double, 75%. The most interesting thing to me here is the number of listings. And this is daily. So you can see in this infographic. So in April of 2023, there were 207 listings a day coming on the market, 207 homes in all of California. Now, I want to pull all of California, even though real estate's certainly local. But right now, we're coming with 562 homes per day coming in the market. So inventory is starting to increase. So that's almost triple. So what's the effect? And so I think that's a big deal. And if you notice, we're not seeing a huge increase in sales. I attribute that to a few things. Number one, I attribute that to the current finance climate. It's tougher. Credit's starting to get tight. They're starting to tighten up on credit card rates, HELOCs, lines of credit. We're starting to see it. Businesses, there's some issues there. But from a financing perspective, they have allowed the debt to income ratio to go up. And there's a lot of programs. Certainly you have a VA, so you have no down, and you have FHA, and you have CalHAF out here, FHA out here in California. And you've got a lot of down payment assistance programs. However, what we're seeing is a lot of homes popping out of escrow. A lot of them. A lot more than I thought would. Well, we're really going back 2006, 7, 8 in a sense, because people they can't afford. They're not always able to afford the home. And I'm not saying about losing home right now. I'm talking about buying a home. So I would say 20-25% of homes are falling out of escrow. And it's a combination of things. One is financing. So it's one thing to be told your payment's going to be $3,500 a month, but you see it on paper. And then, of course, you have the maintenance. And you didn't really think about the maintenance and travel costs. All of a sudden, that $3,500 when you run the numbers is higher. So some people panic. They just do. And that's one of the things that we work with our buyers. We certainly want to make them aware that it's not just the purchase cost, it's the operation cost, also the maintenance costs, and insurance, things like that. So I know you have PITI, but some people just don't take into account other things. So payment, interest, tax, and insurance is PITI. I'm trying to be an all-inclusive payment, if you will. So that's one thing. Number two are appraisals. The market's moved up so quickly that appraisals and appraisers just haven't kept pace. They kept pace for a while, but we're still going up. And so the appraisers are, and the banks are starting to kind of, pull in the appraisals, if you will, rein them in. And, right now the buyers, we're still seeing it. The buyers are very exuberant. We had I called today on a property in Glendale. Home was built in 1920. Nicely upgraded, smallish home, nice lot. 1.249 million, had 17 offers. Called on one in Riverside in the $450,000 range, probably 10 days ago, had 41 offers. Same thing we see here. We see a lot of multiple offers in Orange County. And so we still see buyers that are exuberant. Sometimes you're irrationally exuberant. Some are willing to overpay. We'll come back to that in a second. Now we'll talk about timing things. But financing, you're certainly talking about appraisals. What you're also talking about is inspections. We never, ever, ever, never recommend someone remove all the contingencies when putting an offer in, ever. I don't care how much money you have. The reason why is because there's a lot of unknowns. It could be foundational. It could be, of course, you have asbestos. It could be radon. We rarely check for radon, and asbestos is fairly rare, but it could be. It could have mold, mildew. You have foundation issues. We recommended a client cancel escrow at a home in Newport Beach, and I think it was like $3.5 million. So not painless, but it was the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is always the right thing to do. So it was best for them to cancel that escrow and move on to another home. But if they had not kept that inspection contingency in place, they would have had to buy the home. And who knows how much that would have cost. Now, we did get someone out and they took a look at it. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't going to be tenable for them with a purchase and that. So, but we see a lot of homes that need a lot of work, especially as we're going at certain price ranges, $450,000, $500,000 range. Out in out Riverside, it's crazy amount of work in these homes. Some of these homes need to be scraped. I'm going to look tomorrow. I'm going to look at a home in Laguna Beach that's not fully completed and has a great ocean view. It's $3 million plus, but probably needs an extra $800,000 to $1 million. Not uncommon out here. Going to look at a property in bankruptcy, and then we're going to look at some triplexes in Corona Del Mar and some other areas. So it's going to be a fun day tomorrow. But what we see. And that's one of the neat things about my job is we go into all kinds of different properties, from mobile homes to just 40, 50, $100 million homes. So, and hotels and things. I've helped people research and potentially make offers on, or certainly make offers on various properties. So, but right now, financing, appraisal, condition. But it's coming back for a second to the contingency. So contingency is kind of a what, an if then. If you like the property, if you came in and you had the inspection, you liked the inspection report, so to speak, you approve of it, you would then remove your contingency, your inspection contingency. The appraisal contingency, same thing. If you're going to get a loan, even my cash buyers, I recommend have an appraisal. Let's see, let's get the value from a disinterested third party, if you will, and that's the appraisal company or appraiser. And I think that's important to have an objective view, because a lot of times we're too close to it, and so I think it's important to have that's a good check and balance, and that's what we didn't have in 2006, 7, 8. Certainly, we didn't have it with the underwriters, didn't have it with the loan processors, and gosh, up all the way through the boards and on at the banks. But so it's important. So, but if you like something, then you remove it. If the HOA documents, if you like the numbers and they're not in arrears, there's not a pending assessment, you remove that contingency. So that's the way that works. So. We never recommend anyone remove them all. We do have requests sometimes. We had a request on a property in Riverside, and I told my buyers, no way. Just no way make that offer. No way do you put yourself out there naked, if you will. It's just, It's like naked options, in stocks, stock market. So don't recommend it. And so they passed on that property. Now, I don't believe, I just don't believe it's ethical to, for listing agents to certainly, regardless of condition of market, to come and make that a quote unquote requirement. And we just won't let our buyers do that. So anyway, coming back full circle, I believe that's the reason that we're seeing homes that though we're having more inventory, the number of closes has not increased. It's because we're seeing people. It's a financing issue, appraisal issue, condition issue. So that's number one. But I want to talk about something, and I'm going to veer off a little. I'm going to talk about something called dual agency, double lending. And it's a touchy subject for many. But here's my take on what I do. So my job is not to maximize my income or my revenue at the expense of my clients. It's just not. So many times I tell people, they'll come and they'll say, hey, we want to use you. We want to write an offer, and you can get a commission. We're not. But I know they have an agent. I say, go back to your agent. That person probably has worked hard, and so go back and have them represent you, because you really can't represent both parties equally. I have represented both, and it can sometimes be uncomfortable. I've had sellers that have requested that, but it's very rare. But we have some people. I know some people that represent up to 80% of the buyers of their listings. It's just crazy. Now we have 50,000 agents out here, and it's just not possible. No matter what price range, whether it's 20 million, 10 million, 15 million, 200,000, 400,000. It's just not possible for one person to dominate an area to that extent where they only have the buyers. I was just looking at some some listings today, and I was going through sales comparisons for a seller, and I noticed that an agent represents the buyer and seller quite often in that community, but they don't represent buyers for other people's listings. So what that tells me is it's only that moment, and certainly we get phone calls. It's not unusual. We get text messages, phone calls. We meet people at open houses. But the goal is for the sellers to maximize their sales price, maximize their net, maximize sales price, hold the line on the inspection, on the request for repair, things like that. So I firmly believe it's very important to have representation. You're buying a new home. The builder has their reps. You should have a representative. There's no cost. And the builder's already built in the cost of the fees and commissions to the agent. So at this point, there's no cost. There's no cost to you. Now, they are talking about changing that, but right now you don't pay anything extra. It's built in, if you will, built into the price. So, we're for free, so to speak. You gain, in my case, 17 years of knowledge, and I've helped people build new homes and rehab homes, and so I can come in and my eyes can be a little different than yours. It should be after 17 years. But dual agency is tough. Dual agency applies to the brokerage, not just the agents, and some brokerages. So if I'm with Coldwell Banker Realty. So if a Coldwell Banker Realty agent brings an offer, then dual agency is, and the offer is accepted, dual agency is established. So it's not just per agent, it's per brokerage. So, but we have some people, again, that make it almost a rule, and it can be tough. But when offers come in, I tell people, whether you use me or not, the advice I always give is make certain you see all the offers, review all the offers, get a spreadsheet, go over the financing, just make certain that you have all the information. That's what I do for my sellers. And there are times that I'll rate agents, if you will. Some agents could be a little more difficult to work with, if you will. I've had agents that have canceled multiple escrows with me, and now I know that if we see an offer from that agent, I'm going to counsel my client, my seller, and I'm going to tell them, hey, I this is my experience with this agent. We have some agents that never return calls. Those traditionally are the ones that are representing both the buyer and seller. And I just, with 50,000 agents out there, there are times where it makes sense for the agent to represent both parties. But many probably most of the time, it does not make sense. We're seeing lawsuits, a lot of lawsuits that are coming down the pipe right now about dual representation. In some states, I think New York, for example, it's not legal. You cannot represent both buyer and seller. Personally, I love that. We don't have, and this is weird, when I was a stockbroker, I was a Series 24, the general securities principal. I was they. So I had to approve all the trades. At the end of the day, I signed off on everything, and I looked at all the. If you wanted to trade options, you had to submit there was a questionnaire. Had to vet you that you had the expertise, and so there's a form you had to fill out for the trade options or currencies or things like that. So we had money markets, of course, and mutual funds, stocks, bonds, options. But I wouldn't let someone trade options without verifying that they were sophisticated enough to make those decisions. And so, I mean, you can get crazy. You can go what's called condors, and butterflies, and vertical bull net spreads, and you can go crazy spending all your money without the chance of making money. The only person who would make money would be the broker. And so we paid attention to that. So, so anyway, that was a Series 24. But we had a fiduciary responsibility. We legally had a fiduciary responsibility to the investor. That's one of the reasons we had those questionnaires. If you go to Schwab or you go to Ameritrade, or you go over to Scott Trade or Fidelity, and you want to start trading options, they'll send out a questionnaire, and they want to make certain that you have the financial ability to handle a loss should it occur, and that you know what you're doing when it comes to options, financial capability and capacity. But in it's weird because in real estate we don't have, and certainly in California, we don't have that fiduciary responsibility. It doesn't go as deep as I firmly believe our industry needs to tighten that up. I think we certainly need to focus on you, the consumer, more than us. And we're starting to see a sea change in rules and regulations. One is it looks like the seller's not going to pay a commission to the buyer's agent, which is interesting because that's the way it's set up in California. Now, Australia, it's not. Australia, the home is listed, and then the buyer's agent has to pay. The buyer has to pay the buyer's agent to represent them. So there's additional fee. So you would buy a home for, let's say, $1 million, and let's say you pay 2 or 2.5% commission. You would then pay that agent $20,000 to $25,000 independent of the transaction. We're starting to see some rules and regulations change here and some laws. So it's going to be interesting. And I know that we've seen a couple lawsuits settled. So stick with us, and we'll update you on those, because that's really a big deal. So dual representation, get someone to represent you. Again, I more than a few times, like I said, you have people that hey, I really want this house and I want you to represent me, but I know they came to an open house with an agent, so I'll call that agent. I've done that more than a few times. And I said, the right thing's always the right thing. It just is. Let me come. So that's my rant on dual representation, dual agency. I'm going to stick with it. Let me talk about Proposition 19. Now it's California. So Proposition 19. Gosh, there are so many changes we've seen. We have Prop 50 and 60 and 58. But let me come back to Prop 19. I've done videos on this, but there's so much information out there on so many things that I wanted to verify. And this is important. This is not legal advice, tax advice, financial advice. It's not. But and certainly go to the Bureau of Equalization, the BOE website, for more information about Prop 19. Or you can leave me a message and I'll shoot you what I have on Prop 19. But one of the things that Prop 19 did was it removed the exemption when it came to selling a home upon the passing of a parent. So if the parents bought for $200,000 and the home is now $1 million, there's $800,000 worth of profit there. And so in the past, you used to have an exemption of up to $1 million. You do have that exemption if the child moves in, and whatever age child can be, 50, 60, 70, 10, whatever. If the child moves in, there's an exemption. And now I think it's gone up to million 26,000. Was a million, went up 2.6%. But if the parent dies and we leave it to the kids, the children, and that's the legal term they use. And if they leave it to the children sell the home, it's all taxable between the 200,000 and a million. So I just want to remind people in California that Prop 19 really changed things. It was great for people over 55 when you were moving a tax basis. We were the first in Orange County. I helped a client move a tax basis from a home they owned 30 plus years. For them, they were 80 plus. It was a boon. It was really an opportunity for them to control their costs, buy a little better home, if you will. But they availed themselves of Prop 19. It worked out well. But on the flip side, if you inherit a home and you're a child of the parents, then state's going to come and certainly government's going to come and hit you hard for taxes. So again, consult with your financial advisor, your tax professionals, your attorneys. If you have any questions, reach out to me. We have wonderful attorneys, estate planners, trust attorneys. We have all kinds of people that we can refer you to. That's not something we do, but the way that you set up the trust, there's a lot of different trusts. Successor trusts. And you have, oh my gosh, you have of course living trust, revocable trust, irrevocable trusts. So pay very close attention to how you own that property. Big deal. You have LLCs, S corps, there's all kinds of things. And so again, we work with people on all kinds of different levels. So we represent people when they buy for the LLC or their trust. But anyway, very important. So also then check about a will and a trust and how it works with probate. And I think you'll be surprised. Again, reach out to us. We'll refer you to some attorneys, and then we work with a lot of them. But as far as the real estate market, it's an inventory issue. What we're seeing right now in the general economy, credit card defaults are up. Car defaults are higher than they were during the Great Recession, 2006, 7, 8. And that's concerning. Macy's is reporting a lot of delinquencies, so that's a big deal. Credit card companies have increased their rates, pending bill in Congress. There's a bill being proposed where they want to cap the interest rates, and I hope that goes through. Some of the rates, can just be an enormous success. People just can't pay them off. Now in the past, you could write off the interest on a credit card, but going back on like 10 or 12 years ago, that was disallowed. So pay attention to that. But what we're seeing, the reason I mentioned all the delinquencies, we're seeing inflation tick up. The Fed is not going to raise the rate in this Federal Open Market Committee meeting, the FOMC. However, we do anticipate the Fed to increase rates because it looks like inflation has ticked up again. And that reminds me, and let's talk about interest rates. And I love numbers, macro. It's very important. Money flow, asset flow. Where's the money flow? Chaikin's money flow. All these fun things. But we're watching all of that, and what we're seeing is money coming out of the stock market into money markets or into treasuries. So disintermediation, if you will. If you can get 5% with no risk, why would you take a big risk and get 5%? You probably wouldn't. So risk reward. So what we're seeing is that disintermediation. We're seeing, of course, there's a lot of shrinkage. There's a lot of theft. I mean, my goodness, look what San Francisco did. In Portland and Seattle and Chicago, everybody's folding up tent. They're just leaving. San Francisco, as a matter of fact, I wanted to touch on this. Let me come back to rates, and then I definitely want to touch on the San Francisco situation, what London Breed did. So as far as interest rates, I believe they're going to increase the next Federal Open Market Committee meeting. I believe we'll see 1 or 2 increases. I don't believe we'll see a decline in rates. I think what we'll see, and you've had some other YouTubers talk about this, like Kim McElroy. Give a shout out to Ken and his wife. Fantastic show. Guys bought and sold thousands of units. I listened to him. I listened to Reventure Consulting. I listened to people, Danielle Booth, DeMarco Booth, who used to be an advisor to the Federal Reserve. I listened to the Core Effect. I listen to all kinds of, Bloomberg. Just it's important to, certainly what I do. I believe it's important to have, all that information for as much as possible. So, but I believe they're going to increase rates. What I believe we'll see is that rates will come down, but initially they're going to go up for at least another, probably half a point, 50 basis points. I believe that. They're not going to increase this time, but inflation is still a big deal. They're, the Fed, the Federal Reserve out of San Francisco, or St. Louis, sorry, is targeting 2% inflation, and that's going to be a tough number. Certainly right now, I believe we're at 8 or 9%. And we see it. Gosh, gas out here is $6.50, $7. Now we see it when we go to the store. I mean, it's just, are you gonna believe your lying eyes, or are you gonna believe the numbers right now from the government? I'm gonna believe my lying eyes, so to speak. I mean, gas, it's up. I mean, everything's up. It's crazy. You go to McDonald's, you can spend $50, family of 4. It's crazy. That's inflation, and it's hitting us, big. But so the reason I mention that is there are some people talking about a decline in rates over the next, couple months. I don't believe that's the case. I'm not a soothsayer. No one knows exactly, but I listen to what the Fed says and what they've done. And what they've said is they want a 2% inflation rate. And if you're not at 2, then by default, they have to raise the Fed funds rate. They have to. That's what they've done. It certainly has decimated the commercial market. That's not over. And so that's going to be interesting. And then that's a perfect segue for me, into what London Breed's doing up in San Francisco. San Francisco has been devastated by of course, crime and theft. And in the downtown market, you're seeing property values drop 75% or even more. No one wants to work downtown San Francisco. Not even, the government has a building there. I think the HHS has a building there, and they just tell people stay away. It's just crazy. You're paying for the building, but you're not going to go. And so what London Breed, their biggest shopping mall has closed. The biggest hotels, they literally just gave them back to the city. And I did a spiel on that a few videos ago. Those properties at one time were valued at 1.2 billion. They're now valued at probably optimistically 400 million or less. But the owners just walked away from it. They walked away from the loan. They basically gave the keys back to the lender. And those were 2 big hotels. One was 1,500 or 1,300 rooms, and another big one. The reason I mention that is because London Breed has now decided up in San Francisco 2 things. Number one, they came out with this new housing stimulus plan. Well, state has a housing stimulus plan, so I don't know why she needs one especially for her or for their city. But what's interesting is what she has proposed they do with properties that the private companies couldn't afford. She wants to take them public, make them basically eminent domain. We'll just seize them. And so she wants to turn one into a soccer stadium, hockey, I don't know, one of the two. But her idea is that she can do better than the private sector. And the same thing we've seen with Brandon Johnson out in Chicago. Whole Foods and Amazon, Whole Foods and Amazon, so Amazon, Whole Foods, and Walmart, the largest grocers in the country, literally pulled out of Chicago. So Brandon Johnson said, hey, we're doing so well managing the city. Of course, if you read, over half the kids, it seems like, aren't reading or, up to grade level. And in some schools, I think there were 26 in Chicago, and no child passed the proficiency test. It was just horrific. But politically, what they've said is we can be a better grocer than the world's largest companies, and that's dangerous. And the reason I mention that is we're seeing it here up in San Francisco. We're seeing it, and we're going to see it more. Unfortunately, I think politicians are getting the idea that they can manage the cycles, and they can't. It's just not possible. You can't control all the private markets, and that leads me then to timing, and that is when you're out looking at a home, if you can afford the home, you like the home, you're stay in the home for 2+ years, unless you're really good at flipping, and we'll do a separate show on that. I would say buy the home. Interest rates ultimately, they're going to move up and down. But ultimately, I think they'll come down some, but we're probably a good 12 to 18 months from seeing a decline in rates. And what they might do is simply come back to the rate they are today. So it's not that they're going to come down to 3 or 4%. I don't think we're going to see that maybe ever. That's a rough number. That's a number that just wasn't sustainable. But as far as the politics, it does affect real estate. So London Breed has decided she wants more density. And I mention that, not because I want to get political, but it does affect all of us. I'm right now recording in Santa Ana. Our test in Santa Ana's across the border, and Irvine's runs a little south. But we have the Irvine company is by far the gorilla. They just own almost everything. Certainly, they own most of the apartment buildings, and they owned most of the land, a lot of the land. And so Orchard Hills, a huge development, ultimately over 4,000 homes. All of it was their land, and Shady Canyon was all of theirs, and literally all of Newport Coast was Irvine Companies, which is one guy, Donald Bren. But what they've decided is they've decided that there's more money in the residential leasing. So my understanding is the last development for them at Orchard Hills, that will be their last residential development. There's not enough money. They can't really build for under 1.2 million right now because labor costs, material costs, inflation. Your line eyes are, but inflation is high, and so they pretty much pulled out. What they're doing is they have closed. They're taking hundreds of thousands of square feet of commercial space, office space, retail space, and they're just totally raising. They're scraping a lot, if you will, and they're going to build apartments, and they're going to continue to build apartments because more people are coming in. Whether it's open borders, that's certainly another issue. But we see so many people moving into apartments. As the economy gets worse, more people will certainly need to probably will be forced to move into an apartment, even those that don't want to. And so in Irvine, it would be the Irvine company. So he's taking out retail, he's taking out office space, and he's building these huge apartment structures. If you ever get a chance, take a look at some of those developments. I mean, they're resorts. They're cities within themselves. They're beautiful, and there's a lot of cool stuff. However, by building all those apartments, you've taken the land out of circulation, potential development for single-family homes, condos, townhouses. So all of that land is gone. So when you talk about all these different development plans and of course the state plans for density, that's all well and good. But what we're seeing is a lot of developers are still just going for the real income. Toll Brothers did it in Santa Ana, and a beautiful development, but they've been traditionally a luxury home builder. So what we also see here in Tustin is there's two developments, one by Intercorp and one by, it's off of El Camino Real, which is an area not far from the Irvine Marketplace. And it looks like 24 units. And Brookfield has a little development that looks like maybe 14 condos. They literally bought, looks like a couple houses, scraped a lot. I mean, it's really interesting. Builders are building everywhere they can, even little swaths of land. And in the past, I wouldn't think they'd build 14 or 24 or 30 homes. They would build 200 or 300. They like developments. But because the land is there's just not much land. No matter what the state does, they can't create the land. And that's the thing. And that's what's going to be, I think, most frustrating for builders. They want to build. Builders need the turn, if you will. They got to build. They need to keep their crews busy. They need to keep their finance department busy. And if they're not building and selling, then no one's eating. And I think that's one of the things. If I would say anything to politicians, I would say, let the private sector do what it does best. However you feel about capitalism, it's been extremely good to the world, and probably your family like mine. It's going to be interesting, but what London Breed is doing is getting in the way of the market. And I saw this also in Santa Monica. I was selling an apartment building on 3rd Street. So you had ocean, you had special HOA rules and regulations and special city regulations. And so it was, I don't know, 2.5, 3 million, probably worth double that now. It didn't sell. It was 2006 to 8. But what happened was the owner decided to take me into one of the units, and he showed me. He said, here's what happens when you come to rent control, and also the regulations about what the owner can do to a property or with a property. Took me in a unit, and I would say the stove was 40 years old. The flooring was linoleum and needed to be replaced. The counter was chipped. The windows were single pane. It was not in the best of shape. But here's why he couldn't do anything to that unit. Because if he did something to that unit, he had to do the exact same to every other unit, even if they didn't need it. So you might have had a property, when he bought the property, let's say, for example, that 6 of the 7 units had beautiful granite and they had new appliances, and he bought. So if he did something to the one that needed items, he'd have to do it to all, even if they didn't need it. So that's a heavy-handed, hand of government, if you will, and certainly state and city. So that's what we're seeing. We're starting to see the cities, and certainly the state of California. I'm sure we're going to see it more and more throughout the country. Eminent domain, we see it in Maui, Lahaina. Oh my goodness, beautiful place. Love Lahaina. Had some great times there, and I pray for the people of Hawaii, especially of Lahaina, and people in Maui. A great island and great people. And I pray you keep your land. But what we're seeing out here is the same thing in a sense. We're seeing eminent domain. We're seeing a lot of, we're seeing the public sector believe they can dictate what the private sector does. So a lot of changes coming up. And I appreciate you joining me. If you're looking to make a move, whether you're looking to buy or sell in the next 5 days, 50 days, or further out, give me a call, shoot me a text, send us an email. We'd love to help you make a move to or from Orange County, in fact, all of Southern California. Thanks for joining us. Let us know what's going on in your market.